The Chicago Bears really dodged a bullet with a veteran signing, and they landed a stud in defensive end Montez Sweat. That was with a trade with Washington Commanders last season. You guys know and love that, and it's a move that's already paid dividends. Sweat's impact right on Chicago's defense, that's been evident ever since his arrival in November. The unit went from one of the worst to one of the NFL's best defenses. He's just a cornerstone piece on our young ascending defense, and it could be a top 10 group in 2024. I will argue that it already is, but originally there was trouble in paradise. In fact, the pass rushing stud, he had absolutely no interest in coming to Chicago at all. And this is Sports Talk Bears. I'm Sean. We have a really vibrant family here. We're driving towards 10,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button. Join the family. Would love to have you. So, talking about this major bullet that the Bears dodged, a malcontent player is that bullet. By getting a new contract signed the moment Sweat got to Halas Hall, to wait on that might have been a very bad thing. And the Commanders, they were transitioning from owner Dan Snyder to Josh Harris during the defensive ends contract year. And Washington didn't even engage in extension talks. And upon hearing from Ron Rivera that he'd be traded, Sweat said, and this originated on The Athletic with Dan Pompey. I have it here on bearswire.com. You guys check out either story. It's great. But hearing it from Sweat when he heard about this, he has some regrets. He said that he said some things I wanted to take back. Turned out Rivera and then defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio, they wanted to keep Sweat, but new owner Harris made a push for the team to trade both its starting defensive ends. Chase Young, he was later dealt to the 49ers, and this was all to accumulate draft capital. That ended up helping Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. Rivera got fired after an 8-game losing streak. So there you have it. The Bears did immediately hammer out an extension, though, days after his arrival. He signed a 2019 first. They signed the 2019 first rounder to a 4-year, $98 million deal before week 9. I'm going to close that down. Check out that whole profile. Sweat, he actually took a diplomatic approach publicly when he was asked about an extension, but as he relocated, the defender reportedly has told the Bears that during that time, this is via Pompey, that he would not have debuted. He wouldn't have even played a down without an extension in place. So without an extension signed, would he have actually held out and refused to play? Would he have been a locker room cancer due to being discontent about not only moving towns, but also not having a new contract? I mean, as a Bears fan, I'm super glad that Chicago didn't have to find out. And very quickly following that, he began to see something. He began to see that playing in Chicago had a different feel. A feeling of unselfishness. And this is in the Athletic article, but I'm just going to quote from Montez Sweat. In Washington, everyone was kind of like the alpha male, and they're great players, but it was hard for guys to make sacrifices for all of us to be of one accord. In Chicago, we don't have that problem. And going back, Rivera said in August that Sweat's negotiations, they were on hold due to the ownership transfer once again, that they could end up taking place at that time, but they just never happened. And with Young running into career-altering injury trouble that was midway through the 2021 season, Sweat ended up serving as Washington's edge anchor. And no Pro Bowl nods there, but the 5-year starter, he accumulated 35.5 sacks during his time in Washington. This also included 6 before he was traded to Chicago. So at 27 years old, he received his Pro Bowl invite after he finished last season with 12.5 sacks. And that's also in a new interview with the Athletic's Dan Pompey. He really opened up about this reaction to being traded. And this is straight from him. Look, I was shocked. I was in disbelief. And if you think about it, that makes sense considering the belief. It was always that Washington was going to sign him to a contract extension. Even Rivera thought it was going to happen, but just with the shift in new ownership, it just wasn't in the cards. They wanted to start new, and they had a top 40 pick in the 2024 NFL draft that, as you guys know, they just turned that into defensive tackle Jerzon Newton. I can't say names today. Sorry, you guys. So let's look at that even as Bears fans. Let's be excited by what fell into the Bears' laps and defensive tackle Keith Randolph Jr. I mean, he's going to make this team as an undrafted free agent, and he's going to provide depth that we have so sorely needed. And frankly, I think he's going to play meaningful reps in 2024. And thinking about Randolph and talking this through, I think he's one of those players, and he was a teammate of Newton at the University of Illinois. If you guys remember, they called themselves the law firm, which was pretty cool. He's one of those players that's greatly overshadowed by a high-end prospect, but a player that's sneaky great in his own regard. And I really think teams are going to regret sleeping on him. The Bears got him for essentially free. I'm just excited about Randolph and the depth he's going to provide. And anyways, let's get back to it. Instead of signing Sweat, the Commanders, they ended up going into a full teardown of the defense, at least with the pass rush. They moved on from teammate Chase Young. It's debatable whether that was intelligent, but the teams are just going in opposite ways. And Sweat kind of reflected on the moment that his head coach, Ron Rivera, lots of Bears ties there, right? He actually texted him asking him to come to his office to discuss the trade. And Sweat, once again, he was very emotional. He admits that he didn't handle it well, and that's part that he wished he could probably take back. But his emotional reaction to that, it stemmed from a fear of change, like a lot of us starting over in a new city. A lot of us wouldn't want to start over in a new city, like you can understand that. And he kind of felt like Washington chose a draft pick over him after all he had given the team. And to hear it from him, he's saying it felt like somebody kind of gave up on me, like you aren't good enough anymore. But he arrived in Chicago at Halas Hall just days after the Bears got him. He was signed to that massive 4-year contract, and he got the long-awaited extension. And you got to think that that helps him play on the field. It helps him be content. I mean, I'm sure that contract greatly helped him with his emotions, right? I think it helped me with my emotions, but I also think now he sees that he's joined up with an ascending defense. Instead of a defense headed for a teardown, it's just going to look like a blessing in hindsight. And I think he's seeing that. And to hear from Sweat, to hear him talk about it now, he's saying, I'm playing more free. I'm not worried about getting here. I thought it would happen in Washington, but that's not how it played out. And I have no regrets about how it played out. This is where God wanted me to be in Chicago. And I mean, let's look at his career as a whole, what he did last year. It's just kind of fun to go through. So the 6th-year defensive lineman, he enters his second season with the Bears. He was traded from the Commanders last year. We covered that. He started all 76 games he's appeared in. He has 222 tackles, 137 solo, 41 and a half sacks, 99 quarterback hits, 51 tackles for a loss, 10 forced fumbles, 14 passes defended, 1 interception, return for a touchdown. He's just a stud. And if you remember way back then, he set an NFL combine record for defensive linemen. He ran the 40 in 4.41 seconds. That's unbelievable. And since entering the league, he ranks tied for 15th in forced fumbles, tied for 17th in sacks, tied for 18th in tackles for a loss. And he's only one of 7 players in the NFL with at least 5 sacks in each of the last 5 seasons, and the company that he keeps with that. We're talking Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Khalil Mack, Max Crosby, Brian Burns, Chris Jones. I mean, that's just fantastic company. And looking specifically through some honors, he was a 2024 Pro Bowl selection. Last year, he recorded 57 tackles, 12 and a half sacks, and that's combined between Chicago and Washington. 25 quarterback hits, 14 tackles for a loss, 3 forced fumbles, 4 passes defense. I mean, he is just, and on top of that, he became the first NFL player in history to lead 2 teams in sacks in the same season. So he's been incredibly reliable as well. I mean, a welcome trait for a Bears team that always I mean, we've seemed to have injury issues recently, and he missed 7 games in 2021 due to injury with Washington Commanders, but the guys just played in all 17 games in back-to-back seasons from 22 to 23, back to full health and feeling good, and that's shown on the field. So, I think that's why the Bears have to keep Sweat healthy in 24. I mean, if he goes down, they are in such big trouble. Their pass rushing depth, that's not great behind Sweat, as you guys know. DeMarcus Walker, rookie Austin Booker are the key names on the roster. I mean, losing him would be just a brutal blow for any postseason aspirations that the Bears have. And also, we kind of had another little tiny gut punch. Undrafted free agent defensive end Jamari Chroma. He was a guy that I was pretty hot on as possibly making this team. He was put on the injury list coming into camp, so that's unfortunate as well. So, but we look at injuries; they happen in football. You can't really predict them. Can't afford to lose Sweat. Depth at edge rusher will increase over the years, but they just didn't do enough to add in the offseason here, and keeping Sweat on the field, absolute top priority. So to kind of close, nobody's more important to the defense this season than Sweat. I think you guys know that on the defensive line. I mean, if he plays at the top of his game, if he's healthy, this should be a great unit all around. And GM Ryan Poles, he's got some good pieces around Sweat. May not be done. Let's look at possibly adding a veteran pass rusher here in camp for sure if he feels like he has enough for this year, and I think he might. We can add an absolute stud in the draft next year, and that's something to look forward to as well. You guys, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe as always. I'll see you in the comments, and this is just such a fun community, and I appreciate you all. Bear down, and training camp is this weekend. See ya.